what it pretty much is just a whole. We're going to talk about Moonstick, our DevOps infrastructure, how we get things literally from someone's machine all the way through to live. Changes slightly at the moment, so what we're telling you at the moment is going to be out of date hopefully within the next month or so.
Yeah.
But it's something to look at. And then we'll go and look at some of the more interesting stuff that we've done straight after it. So, for those of you who aren't aware what Moonstick is, it's the new single web platform for TLRG. It's going to be picking up laterooms.com and asiarooms.com. It's written in Node.js, and it's high reliance on automation, environments, and operational stability. So what we did there was we didn't want to make it was hard to get changes out to the people in production. And that kind of came off of this when we were first setting up with Al Brown. We came up with a statement, we'd like to commit to production within an hour. I think we pretty much did that within the very first release. Had to fix something, we got it fixed within 5 to 10 minutes. It's all the way through the pipelines, out to live. So, first bit we want to talk about is a bit about our dev environment. So, it's a shame Dan couldn't do his brown bag today, but we use this thing called Vagrant. So, it's a combination of Chef and Break Shelf and Vagrant itself. And in our instances, we can fire up 3 separate boxes which mimics our live environment. We have a Node.js box. We have a Varnish cache, which also does some of our routing, and because we used cookieless domains for our assets, we fire up an Nginx box. This can all be fired up on the dev machine, so we've pretty much got a live-like representation of how live looks.
So we use a task runner because we're doing lots of client-side stuff, but it also interacts with our server as well. So we use Grunt, which is great, and that basically runs server-side tests, client-side tests. It also builds all of our apps, so all of our assets, so it does revisioning for them, and then it pushes them to our Nginx server. Also set up for running the app straight away, and we run JSCS, which is code styling for both the client and the server. JSHint, which is just checking that actually you haven't got any errors in your code. And also coverage for both our client and our server-side JavaScript. So, alongside that, we also have a tool called Visual Regression, which checks our screenshots for what we expect to be there and what we actually want to be there. So, according to responsive website, we've developed 5 browser breakpoints based on what size screen you're on, whether you're on a tablet, mobile, phablet, old-style desktop machine, or one of the new super high Retina displays. Covers the full Moonstick journey, so we've got it on all 3 of our pages now, across both the brands, although the age rooms ones aren't turned on at the moment. Whenever we want to turn them on, we can switch one quite easily. We're uploading all of our baselines to S3, so we're using one of these funky new technologies. That's where they're kept. So it's not stored in this server here, it's not taking up space in some Git repository, it's, elsewhere. And this version, we're doing some local testing of it. So this is how we actually get the baselines done. Someone does a change to CSS, they know it's going to look different. You run tests, make sure it looks different, create new baselines. If they're not expecting things to change, like just making a one-line change, you can catch it, make sure that it works. We'll go into this a bit further later on with a couple of examples on how it's really helped us, things it's caught. For now, this is still in our dev environment. So Varnish is our routing layer. So one of the first things that people do when they hit the site is hit Varnish. It does caching, but for us it also does our routing. So depending on whether people want to see Moonstick or whether they want to visit the legacy site, it does send it to 2 different areas. So integrates with our legacy site, so as soon as we want to go to the booking form, it says, right, I need to pass you over to the old booking form now. There you go. It's caching, and we've written a load of tests around this as well to actually make sure that our routing layers are testable. VCL is an interesting language, but we think we're slowly getting there and getting the idea of it. But yeah, there's quite a few tests around it and making sure that everything works quite well. And finally, there's Nginx, which is our cookieless domain for assets. It's a caching layer, and it just mimics day 0 domain. Day 0 domain is pretty much so we can make more browser connections to make the speed faster. So instead of downloading everything off the Node servers, we put all the assets onto different servers, which has its own caching layer in front of it, and then we can just literally say, come and grab everything. We're opening up 12 connections per browser or 20 connections per browser instead of the 6 that we usually get from the Node server. So that was a brief look at the dev environment, actually, what we have to set that up. When I will talk a little bit about our dev cycle.
So we're using GitHub for our remote repository instead of GitLab, which is great. So we practice Gitflow, or kind of our own customized version of Gitflow. That basically means instead of everybody committing straight to master, we use branches. So we have a develop branch that is our pre-release branch, and then you check out from there onto a feature branch, and you could have as many feature branches as you wanted. They individually get tested on their own and then merged back into develop. And then develop gets merged into our master branch, which gets pushed up to our production servers. It's really good for kind of separation of code, making sure that you don't have loads of breaking changes straight onto master, which would prevent us from actually pushing code out to live, especially if we've got hot fixes, which we have done in the past. So we found that Go was really slow for us. We're getting to points where it would take kind of 45 minutes for all of our testing to go through for a simple commit. It just wasn't really acceptable for us, so we looked into this new service called Circle CI. That directly integrates with GitHub, and so as soon as a commit is made to GitHub, it will pick it up, and this could be on develop, master, or any of your feature branches, and then it will run through everything that I spoke about with Grunt before, but I think now it takes from a commit about 3 or 4 minutes to get a really quick feedback loop on whether or not your branch is good. And so that, basically just runs everything that I spoke about before. So pull requests, that is part of Gitflow. So when you do a feature branch, you open up what's called a pull request, and this is a feature of GitHub where you can look at exactly everything that has been changed. And you also get another feedback loop from Circle that integrates, basically giving you a red or green to say, actually, this branch is good or it's not good. It's been really good for us as a team as well because it's actually opened up a lot of discussion about code. So if you were to just commit to master, a lot of people aren't going to look at the commit history and say, oh, what do you think about this? Did you think about trying this way instead? And so having people looking at pull requests has opened up a lot of discussion. And people talk about different ways of doing things across the team rather than just in a pair or on their own. It also allows us to have pretty tight coupling with tickets in LeanKit or defects and issues in GitHub as well.
So after we've done all that, we push it onto our develop branch. I think this is the first time actually that it hits Go at the moment. Our next stage, I think, is to actually try and hopefully get rid of this bit as well. So our develop branch works within Circle CI. So Circle CI gives us our quick feedback. Nice quick, everything develops nice and good. Gets fired into Go at the same time, and then when it's in Go, it actually comes back into the TLRG estate, runs the same type of tests. But having the develop branch, as Wilson has mentioned, should we want to actually find something that fails, we've got the develop branch to jump onto, hot fix it on there if we need to, or we don't have to worry about pulling more things in that we've not expected to come in. And again, Go CI do our visual regression tests on it here. So these are actually our first full-scale visual regression tests where we say we expect it to look exactly how we want it to, and we do a build for QA in production environments. The reason why we do 2 separate builds is because of the A0 boxes. The URLs are slightly different. Node doesn't really have a very good way. CSS doesn't have a good way of parameterizing HTML. That's our dev environment. So, we'll have a quick look at our QA and pre-production environment. So, Moonraker, which someone in this room built. So, one of the first things that we did when we were looking at our entire testing stack was we wanted some end-to-end user tests. Not too many, we just cover the happy path, but we found out that in the Node environment there wasn't really that much available and the tools were a bit rubbish. So Danny nicely came along and started working on this tool called Moonraker. So it was a custom-built tool that we built in the house. It's now open source, or very least on NPM, and people can use it. I believe it's been used quite a lot, isn't it, Danny? Not just us.
Well, it's about 300 users. 300? For a testing thing, it's not the next Flappy Bird.
As it says, it runs our user journeys, so we're testing-wise, we're very dependent on low-level code testing, but these just actually make sure that the people, our users, can do what they want to do. Rather than tying up test environments for 20-30 minutes, actually doing all this end-to-end testing, we like to focus on just making sure users can do what we want them to do. As I said, happy fast testing, uses read browsers, and it calls the full stack real APIs. So this is the first point where we've actually done the testing, where we're testing the rest of the infrastructure as well. So a bit about testing. So we still do some testing as well. It's a bit of a focus for our team at the moment. We're trying to change the way that testing happens. So we have a lot of automated tests that actually test tickets, but what we find is our QA time is better spurred up doing a lot more exploratory testing. We do multi-device testing, browsers, tablets, mobile. We have a live light load simulator, which is just literally calling the site the entire time during QA. So we've got a good idea on how things are performing, how things are not. Scaling at the moment means we probably need to update that, so it's a bit out of sync. We have a set of auto routing tests, so because it's our full integration point, it hits the Varnish layer. We need to make sure that P-codes go to the right places, whether you want to get legacy or Moonstick, just literally to totally make sure. And they're all written in Zombie.js, which is really, really quick. I mean, it runs a suite of about 30 tests in 30 seconds. So in terms of routing, it's really good. There's a link checker. I know it sounds like a simple thing to have, but it's a good thing to have. If someone accidentally makes a change or a link changes in the background, it's good to know it's happened. And we have a W3AF security test, which runs against the site just to make sure that there isn't any known vulnerabilities and complies to a certain standard. Antonio in the security team helped us out with that. He was the one that recommended it. Who did this one? Was this one me or you? So we use this thing called ELK, which if you've ever been to one of Steve's talks is Elasticsearch log/Kibana. So this is the first time we actually get some instance of run data, which is our real user metrics. So our live light load simulator is sending that to load of users. So through Kibana and Elasticsearch, we can actually track page load times. So if we push something onto QA and all of a sudden get some jump up in page load time, we know that our performance has been degraded. I mean, again, it's not totally live light because we've got a nice fast connection down to Xerox, whereas real users don't have. But it's a good first indicator if something's completely and utterly messed up. I mean, even small little jumps make a difference, especially good when we're bringing new tags on. We like to see how they're impacting performance. Then we can say, if it's gone up 10%, then it's a massive impact on real world users. We use it for logging. Also error logging, so we don't just get error logs, we also get what people are using, which is really good for us finding out with our beta tests, what people are doing, where people are dropping out. And again, diagnostics, find out errors and errors occurring, we need to figure out why. We can drill all the way back through the stack to see what happened, what that user was doing, where they were coming from, etc., etc. This is something that we'll focus on a little bit more later and talk about some of the problems that we've had and some of the things that we found. I'll let you do New Relic.
So yeah, we're using New Relic for our QA environment. So it's kind of similar setup to our live environment as well. So we can just look at stack traces and any errors that we might get in our QA environment. And similarly to ELK, they give us stats on performance, which is really useful. Again, as Paul said, if we push something, it gives us a massive jump in kind of performance. Well, degradation in performance, we know before we actually push it out into live that that's happened. And then just general diagnostics for the servers.
That's our QA and pre-production environment. Now, remember we were doing this to an audience that wasn't in here, so this was actually taken as a bit of a joke at the time we were doing it. So this is our production environment. So we use Moonraker again. In this environment, we're actually working with the operations team to get them involved with the right Cinder testing. So tests that we write will become their monitoring tests. Rather than them writing their own set of tests, we know that we could break their monitoring ahead of time. So when we get it into QA, when we get it into live, they'll be the exact same tests. And we can then maintain the tests and keep them updated for them. As I mentioned before, it's open source, runs user journeys, blah, 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 blah. So testing level here, we've dropped quite a bit of testing, but still have some auto-rated testing. So we still do our routing tests, make sure that, because we're dependent on Varnish, and Varnish is dependent on other people as well, making changes, we need to make sure that our tests still work. And we have the link checkers again. We use Elkia. Big difference here is we're using live run data instead of the pre-canned run data that we have, so it's actual real user metrics across all the pages. Again, we use it for logging, error logging, diagnostics, and we also feed out to Steve's badge dashboards. So there we have our dashboard set up, and it monitors errors, monitors JavaScript errors, gives us the page load time for each of the pages and how many requests we're getting. Also some updates on how our servers are performing, whether they're in or out in the APIs. I'll let you do New Relic again.
New Relic, exactly the same as in QA. I think the idea of this part of the talk, when we did it originally, was that actually we wanted to show that our different environments are just as good as our live-like environment, so we can actually test all the way from the beginning, all the way from dev, that actually we'll get back that really fast feedback loop that something's gone wrong. So although it seems kind of stupid to repeat it in the test, in the talk, it's meant to show that it's exactly the same in QA and live.
That was our production environment. And then another little bit beyond this is what happens when Moonstick goes out beyond hours. We release a code release, and this is just a bit of work that we're doing with the operations team to make sure that we can make their lives easier, make their lives better. So as I mentioned before, we're doing some work with Moonraker, except this time we're going to fire it through their single journeys. So this will be constantly running, this will be constantly monitoring the user journeys, and it's the exact same test that we're in live, as well as the exact same test that we're in QA. So we make a change in QA, we can update the test to say, when this goes live, there you go, you're going to have some new set of tests. New Relic. So in New Relic we do app-based reporting. So the application index, if you've ever been to any of the New Relic talks, is an arbitrary number that they assign. We have some monitoring based on that, so if you drop below a certain point, we trigger an alert. We monitor server performance, throughput on how many users are getting it, which is really good for our scaling side. So as we're turning on more and more people to the platform, we can actually monitor it all the way back through and go back to all the way where the APIs are, and we can actually diagnose problems. And as we've been seeing over the past couple of months or so, it's been really, really invaluable for us. We see an issue on our front end, we can trace back to where it was, and then teams can get together and actually figure out what's happening and how it's working and how to improve things. I'll let you do well this time.
It's exactly the same as before.
Yeah, so the operations teams use help as well. We help them with this as well. We spend some time with them, explaining what we do, and I know Steve's spending a lot of time with them as well. So a little bit about the Moonstick team, if you don't know about us. I'll let you do the left side.
So we're a cross-functional team, so I think we've got about 6 devs. I'm actually a UI developer, is my title, but I work mainly in Node every day, but obviously as a cross-functional, I do a lot of client-side stuff, obviously HTML, CSS, that kind of thing. And then we got Paul, test engineer, and then we got 2 testers, and so everyone kind of gets involved in a lot of things. And so we're a collaborative team, I guess. And the reason for bringing up these things was just to show a couple of things that we think actually makes us better as a team. And they might seem a bit arbitrary or not really relevant, but I think they actually help quite a lot. So Slack is just a chat application, but it actually allows us to kind of post articles or links or something, anything that you want, and get some kind of discussion on it. I know we kind of sit next to each other and only a couple of meters from each other, but it's still a really nice thing to have, to actually be able to chat. GitHub, as I mentioned before, having a discussion on code, pull requests or just commits has been invaluable for us, and it's brought up a lot of things like actually you could do it this way instead, it might be faster. And that's led to people actually changing their code and making it better. Another thing is having another pair of eyes on it, or another 3 sets of eyes on it, has brought up actually there might be an error in something you're doing here. This could cause an error, or you're not going to catch this if this does occur. Having people's experience on kind of working with APIs where we've had some interesting behavior previously has been really helpful. New Relic, as we mentioned, Circle again has been brilliant. It's so much faster than Go. It integrates with Slack as well, so it just gives us that really fast feedback loop that my branch is good. We chat, obviously, and brown bags is what we're doing now. And then Code Club, although we haven't done it for a while, if everyone's interested in kind of learning new technology or trying to get more, a better knowledge of something in the Moonstick code base. We'll kind of get together and we'll look at it together or in pairs or something.
Yeah, so we've been really good at improving our inter-department collaboration. So we have a really good relationship with SEO, and I think it's been drawn on the fact that we've engaged them right at the very beginning. It's not been a case of we tried to do something and we've asked them and said, you know, how is this going to impact you? Go with us. Same with analytics and service. Again, service desk, we talk to them all the time. We say exactly what's going to happen. And I think an interesting thing with the service desk is we actually say to them, we're not going to release because we're not happy with it. Which has actually brought us quite a lot of favours with them. The fact that they trust us a lot more because we say no to builds going live, despite the fact our stakeholders and our product owner probably doesn't like it that much, although I think he understands it most of the time. That's how it goes. An interesting one, SEO and analytics actually attend our stand-ups in the morning. So it's not as if they're external to the team. One person's always there and is giving some input and knows exactly what we're doing on a day-to-day basis. We believe in people and tech before process. So what we do there is we find our best ways of working, not because it's been written down or what it's gone before. Talking about the dev environments, I mean, we've got some really interesting plans on the horizon and what we're going to do in our dev test area, within reason, obviously. It's no blame culture, so that's pretty much what we go with within our team, at least publicly.
Just get shot.
You know, we have fun when we're working, so, you know, it may look from the outside that we're jerking around, but we're not. We're actually just having a bit of fun and we're getting on with our work besides, and we don't take things too seriously. So, you know, we're good at our jobs, we understand the ways of doing it, but we don't get bogged down with it and think too much about exactly what's going on. So what we're going to do now is we'll just try and expand a little bit on a few other things. We're also going to go for GitHub.
So this relates back to Gitflow, and it kind of fits into that beyond section before, and I think it's going to be a massive thing for us, which is having feature branches actually deployed to servers. So because a lot of what we do is UI-based stuff, and we're actually implementing so many new features, we want to be able to push them up and actually have a tester look at it or other devs look at it before it gets put into the code base and potentially starts blocking other things. So recently we did a full redesign of the search results page, and actually once it was fully done, there was some discussion and people decided that wasn't good enough and it needed more work. And actually because of that, it blocked kind of 2 days of releases because it was already in the branch. But once we've got these feature branches being pushed to servers, we can actually push it up, then have that discussion before it gets merged into our kind of main branch. So I think that's going to be a massive one for us, and hopefully we'll be able to get that sorted next week or so, depending on external sources.
Yeah, and I know there's a big push about people using Gitflow and maybe looking at it as a good technology. It's not an automated process. So if you're looking for something to keep pushing things down the line, it's not meant to be like that. It's meant to be about people having a discussion and having an actual human being do some work. It's all based on collaboration. It's not a process to make things, I wouldn't necessarily say quicker, although for us we're making it easier by bringing some of these flows in, like the release branches and the feature branches. It's not a way of making it go quicker. It's a process to help it improve quality. Here we go, visual regression. So rather than have a suite of tests that actually test everything works, we pretty much right at the very beginning wanted to throw that out the window. But we were very much wanted to know that when styling changes happen or someone's changing a piece of CSS, it's not going to completely and utterly mess up the web pages, and it's not going to completely mess up it across both the brands. So this is just a quick intro to that. So that's our 5 breakpoints. So going all the way from the small mobile all the way up, you can see how the pages change. And a little change in just a little bit of CSS could make one of those pages look totally horrible on a different device. So what it does is it compares a known good screenshot against what is currently being produced by the build. It uses a tool called Phantom CSS, which itself is wrapped in a Grunt plugin, which goes back to a bit we'll talk before we invest in. We have our entire test environment built in the tools that we use, so we're not throwing a piece of Ruby in because we feel like it, we're not throwing a piece of C# in because we feel like it. We're all JavaScript developers, we use the tools and the environments available to us to get it to work. uses phantom JSS, and it highlights the differences in pages, and it fails to build based on the mismatch tolerance. So this is quite important. You're never ever going to get a 100% match on both on pages. Dates change, things change, little bits here and there change. But we have ours set to about, I think, about 1.5%, which generally picks up all the major stuff. So here's an example which we have. So this is our Late Rooms homepage. I think it's actually going back to that now, isn't it? So that was what we expected, and that was what we got. So fair enough, they both look pretty similar. In fact, they both are similar. That was fine. So when we went to Asia Rooms, though, this happened. So that was what we expected on the left, and that was what we got in the middle. If anyone see what the difference is who wasn't here at the last one?
Shifted up, isn't it?
Yeah, the nav bar's gone missing. So this was actually a change that we did for Late Rooms, but it completely messed up Asia Rooms not having a nav bar. So without that, we wouldn't have known. And that was Phantom CSS's overlay. It's like, hang on a minute, your entire page has shifted up. Why has that happened? And it was because, we made a change on Late Rooms. Didn't think that much about it affecting Asia Rooms, but, it made the nav bar disappear. So what's good about it? It's got a lot of style issues across both brands, as we've just seen. And it's a quick feedback cycle on visual style changes. So rather than getting it in front of an actual person and getting them to look at it, it's an automated process that says, hang on a minute, you broke something here, it looks different, have a look why. And, I've had a few discussions with people about it. How does it compare to, acceptance testing? Well, acceptance testing is good, but you can use this to leverage a lot of things and make your acceptance testing suite a lot smaller. A few lessons that we've learned. We've had some Linux fonting issues, but this has been solved with the Chef Cookbook. So Linux likes to shift fonts based on how it's feeling at a certain time of the day. There's a good cookbook out there to actually use the Microsoft fonts and the Apple fonts, so we switched around to do that. Big lesson that we learned, if you delete the baselines, it doesn't work. It just keeps passing the build. It's got nothing to compare it against. And Git isn't a good place to store baselines. So if you're producing a 8 megabyte PNG file and you're checking it in on a 2-3 times a week basis, your Git repository gets really, really big. And we can solve both of them by moving into S3. So when we redid the task, we said, you cannot delete the stuff on S3. It's always got to have something there, and if it's not there, then it fails to build anyway. It just goes to S3 and says, hang on a minute, there's nothing for me to do here. There's something wrong.
Are you still keeping a history of the baselines?
They're kept in Go for as long as they're kept. But again, it's a case of, it's such a rapidly changing pages anyway, and it's not really much use having much of a history. Future, Phantom CSS is good, but it does have some problems with it, so we're kind of hoping someday we'll build a custom visual regression tool and use things like anti-aliasing, and then that will hopefully allow us to expand it out more to using multi-browser visual regression. At the moment, to use Phantom CSS, every browser kind of ends the page slightly differently, so this will hopefully allow us to do it across all the Internet Explorers, multiple versions of Firefox, multiple versions of Chrome, and then hopefully, you never know, hopefully expand it out to devices as well, see how it starts looking on devices. So Elk. So I'll pretty much begin with this, but I think me and Will are going to chip in at both points here. So Elk stands for Logstash, Elasticsearch and Kibana, in case you didn't know. This is one of the things that we use it for, so it's our badge dashboard, which we kind of talked a bit about before. This is the one that's currently sat above our desk. Monitors our errors, our JavaScript errors, Asia Rooms page load time, which, yeah, it's not that great because it's going halfway across the world still. But Late Rooms page load time and Late Rooms requests are all on the left. So we can monitor them and keep them going. If someone see us and shoot up in either of them, we can go, well, why has that happened? If someone having a server outage, general first impact, something's going on. Banner, so this is our Moonstick Live. Again, top all the logging events that's coming in, so as long as we're getting events, it means people are hitting the site, people are coming in. And then we have our error responses underneath, which again, the red ones are client errors. We're never ever going to get 0 with them because of the browsers, but the more important ones are the MS errors. So we had a little blip at that point, and so if we get something get us some jump up, one of us will jump into Elasticsearch start digging around, start figuring out what's going on, see if it actually is something that we've messed up or if there's a problem, and then go from there. And then the bottom one, when we did this, we weren't getting that many, but this was 400 and 500 page errors. We're still most of the homepage at this point with very little traffic on search results and hotel details. This has started to show a lot more now as more people come in with bot travel, just spinning up and doing multiple things. So, a few interesting discoveries. Do you want to jump on the first two?
Yeah, so the restricting subnet one was a really interesting one. We basically, there is some part in our application that says it's to do with partner codes. We don't want to set a partner code for anyone within our internal network. This is because lots of people in the contact center, instead of going to laterooms.com, we're Googling late rooms and clicking on the advert and then getting a partner code and booking, which is not what we wanted at all. There was a really weird bug that we actually were able to solve with Kibana when O2 used same kind of subnet, 10 dot, and so we were 404ing, I think, everybody. Oh, there was a bug in our code anyway, and so it was sending them to this bad piece of code because they used the same subnet. This caused a spike in errors, but we couldn't diagnose it by just going on. It was just it was a really strange one that actually Kibana was able to help us with, because there were only about 30 errors because there weren't that many people going through O2 mobile. But yeah, that was an interesting one. And Asia Rooms 404, before, about 6 months ago, when our application was still relatively new, the way that we routed traffic or the way that we made sure that Asia Rooms was being shown instead of late rooms was by using a route, and so Varnish was pinging the box with /en-gb/8 Asia Rooms, and then we started 404 in this because we didn't want any traffic coming through. So Varnish change wasn't made, and then no one could get the 404, but actually we were able to discover it through Kibana because other people were getting it. And so yeah, Kibana's been really invaluable for us in diagnosing errors that we haven't been able to get in test or even in live from our own machines in the building.
Yeah, so the iSinger one was kind of where we first started the whole getting our tests into iSinger journey. All of a sudden, all the iSinger tests for late room started failing, and the reason was because he done some code changes to say no longer allow a similar type of thing with this. You're not allowed into it through the building. Route them to a 404 page. Stop them doing this. So, I mean, again, we just randomly get a spike of errors every 5 minutes. It was on 3 or 4 errors, but it was going on with that. And then after about an hour, Ben went over to Steve and said there's something going on with late rooms because everything's failing. Kind of came around back to us, and we actually realised that we blocked their tests. So, again, without Kibana, we wouldn't actually have understood what was going on or exactly how it was happening. So, because of that, we made some changes. We understood what was going on, exactly what caused it, and it was all down to Kibana. And then an upshot of that was, we're going to start taking ownership of the operations tests. So we have the same thing across the whole board. So what is it? I mean, yeah, I think most of you use it within here. We use the run data as well to actually get some data out of it and what our real users are doing. We have it in QA and live environments, and our operations team are working with them to actually get them to use it a lot more. We also have the ability to stand it up in dev. Don't know if anybody's ever done that, but if you want to get some data and make your logging a lot easier, you can fire it up on your own machines. So a bit of something working on for the future. A bit of a unified monitoring solution. Some of the discussions with the operations and service team has been, yeah, your logging's good, but it doesn't tell people who are not familiar with the code. So we want to try and make it a bit more diagnostic based, a bit more putting out errors like, I'm getting a lot of errors from here, maybe you should have a look and see if it's an API that's having a problem or something specific is happening. And again, just furthering on where with that, I think Steve's kind of working on as well.
Yep.
Cool. So that was pretty much it. Do you have any questions? Shoot.
When we used to turn branching, which used to get data in there with SPN, how do you guys find it to develop in the future, and 3-4 on time, to get like merged out Or is that not essentially like that?
So generally it doesn't. We don't have long running feature branches. And again, I mean, if you look at that situation, it's probably because either the ticket hasn't been broken down small enough to be achievable within a particular time frame, or it was just too big of a feature to begin with, and it needed to be it just generally needs to be broken down further. I mean, we've never got into that situation, have we?
Not really, not in a really bad way. I mean, obviously there'll be merge conflicts with like kind of one or two lines in my memory anyway, but I think we're definitely aware of branches sitting in there for extended periods of time. I mean, we've got one in there now which was, I think, put in before Christmas, and it's been sitting there blocked. So I don't think any work has been done in the same area as the branch has had its work done in, but it's very possible that actually we might just have to delete that branch and just start again. There have been some really interesting links that we read. I read an interesting article the other day by this guy saying that all the work that he does every day, he pushes it up onto a branch, but at the end of every day he deletes that branch and starts again, because he believes that he can redo that work again the next day. And it was an interesting theory, and we had a bit of a discussion about it. And I suppose in that sense that actually merging stuff in, it could be an interesting one to try out, that actually that work you can do it again anyway. And it goes back to what Paul was saying, that if your branch is massive and you're doing tons of work, it's probably the ticket you're working on is too big, and you should break it down into smaller features or smaller branches. Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, that's the idea. Within a couple of days, yeah.
I'd say mostly our merge issues have come from when we've been using the Git flow method and we've discovered something in live and we wanted to fix it straight away. But Git itself has a mechanism called rebase, which literally means that it's not going to put your changes on top of it. It's going to compare develop onto what your changes are. So we can say rebase develop onto this and make it your new develop branch. So rather than it coming the other way and saying, I want to put this in here, these files have changed here, there, and everywhere, it'll say, right, take this as your master copy, put stuff on top of this, and then it goes through the same system. So if we break something in develop, we then have to go back and say, what's this broken develop?
It's a very quiet group. Of course, yes, that's it.
Right. Cool.
Thanks very much.
All right.